Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, the political dragon from my office in the Bronx, New York. It is October 20th, approximately 3:30 in the afternoon, and I needed to speak with you. I was going to wait until the Sunday live stream to bring this up, but I think it's important that we deal with it right now, before everyone forgets about it over the weekend, before the rest of the news media ignores this or buries this story and tells you should be paying attention to something different, because it affects our government, it affects our future as Americans, it affects everything, and you probably are never going to hear about it. Let me explain what I mean in just 1 second. First of all, I do want to mention that if this is the first time that you are seeing our channel, we welcome you. We thank you for being part of our audience. We do long-form political commentary, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out across the internet to hear your voices from anywhere in the world on the issues that affect us all. And we hope that you will join us this Sunday to share in that process, to share in the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, because it is not just an American way of life, it is for everyone around the world. Whether your government agrees or whether the internet overlords agree, it doesn't matter. We want to hear your voice every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's address the issue that I'm talking about today, because I think it is fundamentally important, and it has been dumped on a Friday, which means that they don't expect you to pay attention. This is the day that they try and get rid of all the negative news, so you will forget over the weekend as you try and enjoy yourself, whether it means going out to a bar, playing a video game. God help you if you want to watch a movie, which is all propaganda nowadays. They want you to be distracted so that by Monday they have a new cycle to tell you what you should approve and what you should believe. And let me be clear, when I say they have an approved agenda for you, you need go no further than to see the recent news from YouTube that says that they are going to be focusing on the approved messaging of the mainstream, that they have already made the decision for you that you can only hear news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, only the sources that they want you to hear, so you don't ask questions that could affect our government and the way it is being run at this time, and the way that it affects international governments around the world. Let me be very clear about this. We are in a problematic situation where we are seeing suppression and censorship actively put into our lives to corral us into a pasture like sheep, so that we do not question things that are going to have a massive impact. And when I say that, I'm talking about, as an example, the news that I received today about Marc Molinaro. He's the representative of the New York 19th District, a Republican. And that does not give him shelter from this channel or myself. Yes, I am a conservative Republican, and even though that is the case, I still have to call out Marc Molinaro because it doesn't make sense. Let me be clear that one of the reasons why what we're about to talk about, is so important, and to understand the context of how it's going to affect both America and the rest of the world, is to understand that we have less than 45 days. We have until November 14th to fund the United States government, or we will go into default. The government will shut down. That will, in the first week, not have a big impact. But going further than that, and that is likely to happen given the partisan divide that exists in our Congress and in our nation at this time, this will affect both the United States and the rest of the world. The fact that we have less than 45 days, we have approximately less than 30 days to get our government funded, is the reason why the United States, for the second time, was downgraded in terms of its credit rating, only happening once before under Obama and now happening under Biden. And the reason for the most recent downgrade was because our government doesn't function. It is dysfunctional, it is inefficient, it is ineffective. And that is the problem. And we are going to see that continue. So having a House Speaker, having a government that is focused and centered and is able to act efficiently and effectively is critical. And it's not just the financials that we're talking about. We are seeing news, and I'll talk about this in another video, about the United States hostages that were taken by Hamas. Over 30 Americans killed by Hamas. An ineffective government, a government that doesn't have strong leadership, is a problem for the United States, its people, and the world. So we need to be effective, and part of being effective is having a House Speaker so that we can get the bills on the floor, so that we can vote on those bills to help our economy, to address the inflation that is going on, that some would say is as high as 24%, and we would say, going by government data, has been as high as 17%. You know this. We need to address this. We can only do that by having an effective government, a government that is functioning, which we do not have at this time. So I've laid out the groundwork of what is going on. Why is this important? Why is the current situation important? We have to deal with Hamas. We have to deal with Ukraine, Russia. We have to deal with China. We have to deal with the United States economy, inflation. We have preeminent dangers facing America. Potentially three regional wars, as we have described and discussed on this channel multiple times. An economy that is hurting the poor and the middle class disproportionately. We have issues we have to deal with. So having a House Speaker is critical, because without that, our government stops. And we can't afford to stop at this moment because, again, we have less than 30 days to get the funding of the government in place so that we can address everything else. And the mainstream news media is telling you, well, no, you don't have to worry about that. Follow CNN, follow MSNBC, follow Fox News. They will tell you whatever is important to them so that you will vote the proper way in 2024. Remember, these are the same people who fortified the 2020 election. They have an agenda. Do not be led into the false messaging that, these are people who are independent or neutral. The mainstream media has an agenda, as they have expressed in the 2020 election when they fortified it, and so do the social media giants, who are also part of that fortification of the 2020 election, as reported by Newsweek shortly after that election. So let me bring it back to what does Marc Molinaro of the NY19, what does Jim Jordan have to do with this? Let me explain. Many people who have followed the channel for a long time know that I have spent over 20 years of my life living in Broome County, central New York. It's upstate New York. It's basically the central portion of New York and part of the New York 19th district. It used to be the New York 22nd district. I've known several members of Congress in covering the news in that region as well as across the state. So I have met Marc Molinaro 3 or 4, maybe 5 different times now. I've covered him live at town halls, and he's a decent middling congressman. He's no one extraordinary. He's not someone who normally gets a lot of news or attention. He's just the middle of the pack, as most of the 437 members of Congress are. You know very few of their names. Why is Marc Molinaro important? You see, it was up until 4 days ago, Marc Molinaro was supporting Jim Jordan of Ohio in becoming the next Speaker of the House of Representatives. And that's an important position. Again, everything else that we need to address that are preeminent threats and issues for America have to go through the Speaker to address the rest of Congress. And Jim Jordan, whether you like him or not, he's one of the key members of the Freedom Caucus. He is someone who is very focused on the American rights, the Constitution. Some people love him, some people hate him. Look at his actual record. He has stood up for the First Amendment and freedom of speech. He has stood up for individual rights, to limit the government, to limit government spending. He hasn't been successful in those efforts, But that is what he has consistently done. He has a focus to bring America, to shrink the size of the government, to shrink the power of the government, and to focus more on preserving the rights of individuals, not as categories, not as part of an equity pyramid, but as individuals under the Constitution as it was originally written. You may like that, you may disagree with that, but at least he has a focus. And Marc Molinaro, up until as recently as 4 days ago, had been supporting Representative Molinaro. As we can see reported here, Marc Molinaro says he has no objection against Representative Jim Jordan, and that he acknowledges the nation needs a focus. The Congress needs a focus to address the issues that are ongoing. This is from 4 days ago. I want to be very clear about that he voted for Jim Jordan twice. He had no objection for supporting and voting for Jim Jordan up to at least 4 days ago. This is where it gets complicated. Now, again, you may agree or disagree with Marc Molinaro on his vote. You may agree or disagree with Jim Jordan on his focus or his issues or his position. That's up to you. I'm not questioning that. But the question that is important is what comes next. Again, I want to make sure, and I'm doing this to make sure that you have full context as opposed to the ever shorter news blip, 30-second, 1-minute news sound bites that are being promoted by YouTube and the mainstream media, leaving out the essential details in the background so you can make an informed decision. And while I'm doing that, let's make sure we take care of 2 other items that I'm sure are going to come up from the left and from others that may not like Marc Molinaro or Jim Jordan, and they're going to throw this out there, and it's not applicable. The first one's going to be insurrection. And people will say, and there are some already saying this on Twitter, on Threads, on various platforms, usually more left-leaning, they're going to say, well, what's going on right now is an insurrection. It is an attempt to destroy the United States government, to take it over violently. There is no evidence of that. That is incorrect. That is propaganda and fear-mongering. Anyone who's telling you that the ongoing process right now with Jim Jordan, 3 votes in, and tell you that this is an attempt as an insurrection doesn't know the meaning of insurrection, nor have they ever seen or paid attention to insurrections we have seen around the world and throughout history. That is the incorrect label for this. What we have seen is a change of government, a vote of confidence. Every government that has a parliament is familiar with this process, where you have a leader, Kevin McCarthy, who fell out of favor with many of his members, his party, much of the nation. They have a lack of confidence, and a vote of confidence was made. He was removed as speaker because he failed that vote of confidence. This is what the rest of the world goes through on a regular basis. Just ask our friends in the United Kingdom. They see this all the time. That being said, so we know that there was a vote of a lack of confidence. Kevin McCarthy was removed. That is not insurrection. That is part of the process of our government in its normal operation, as it is with many governments. It's not insurrectionist to have that vote to remove a speaker or to put a new one in place. And let's also remember that there's been a lot of hype about the fact that Jim Jordan has gone through 3 votes. Kevin McCarthy went through 15. So you can't tell me that he had a lot of confidence or that this was so unusual. And we have seen many speakers of the House go through multiple votes before they get elected. This is not a new process, nor is this extreme, nor is this even relative to this year alone, something that has never happened before. It is in the norm. The other term I want us to be very clear about is slander. Using the ability to make statements, both libel would be written, but verbal would be slander, false statements that are meant to incite a group against another group, to diminish others, to cause people to be angry with or to have a prejudice against individuals based on false statements that are untrue, unclear, unverified. That's an important thing. We need to keep that in mind. And some will say that what we're about to discuss is slander. It is not. I am not being slanderous nor libelous, nor am I trying to incite anyone. I'm trying to inform, and I want to be very clear about that because I know there will be Republicans and conservatives who will be upset that I'm addressing Marc Molinaro in this manner. But I am holding him to the same standard that I hold Hakeem Jeffries, AOC, the squad, any government in the world. I hold them to the same standards of effectiveness, of efficiency, and to remove as much corruption and propaganda as is possible. So, again, as of at least October 16th, Marc Molinaro continued to support Jim Jordan for the Speaker. We now see that in the third vote for the Speaker of the House to be able to allow our government to continue to operate effectively in any manner, efficiently, at least to the standards that we have seen over the last several decades, for our government to operate at all and to address the issues of Hamas, American hostages, over 30,000 Americans being abandoned over the last 3 years in 4 different nations, all 4 war zones, the fact that we have to deal with the U.S. economy, inflation, how it's affecting the poor and the middle class, to address any of these things as inefficiently as government normally does, we need a speaker. And now Marc Molinaro, in the most recent vote, voted against Jim Jordan. That's an interesting turn of events. In 4 days, from October 16th to October 20th, suddenly Marc Molinaro of the NY19 took away his support for Jim Jordan, someone that he had no problem voting for twice before, someone that he said could do the job. And you have to ask the question, why did he reverse his position? Well, some would say, well, there's been 3 votes, so there's a lack of confidence. And I would point to Kevin McCarthy went through 15 votes. We've seen multiple votes on Nancy Pelosi. That's not unusual. What changed? That's the key question. Well, we get part of the answer, as we can see from this report by Fox News, which other news media, credible news media, have also reported on, that there was a vote amongst Republicans to remove Jim Jordan, that he will no longer be running for the House Speaker. Someone else would step up and try and take that position. Fine. That's not important right now. You see, in this report, there is also a quote from Marc Molinaro himself. And in that quote by Marc Molinaro, who no longer supports Jim Jordan, suddenly, in 4 days, there are now the accusation of threats. Not just political threats to support Jim Jordan, but threats of violence. Now, this cannot stand by itself. Something has happened. And in fact, we did go further, and I have sent out a public tweet to Marc Molinaro to explain himself and to tell the public directly what changed, what is different, what new data, what new information has occurred, because the American people deserve to know this. And I think this is absolutely critical. As you can see, we have not, in the recording of this video, I did receive a response back from Representative Marc Molinaro. Again, someone who I have met several times in person, who does know me by name and is aware that I do these political commentaries. And as you can see on the screen, Mr. Molinaro has stated that his reason for his change in vote as of within the last 4 days is that he does not believe Jim Jordan will be able to unify Republicans and the Congress. To which the question I have to ask is, first of all, what is the issue that did not exist 4 days ago that exists today, which he has not addressed? In addition, we are asking him the question, as you can see right now, that we have asked him, you said that this is about threats including violence. Who made the threats, and who were the threats made against? Again, this is coming from Fox News. Again, these are quotes coming from Marc Molinaro and quoted by Fox News. This is what he said, that there is violence, there is threats of violence, that this isn't simply an ideological political difference of opinion. It isn't a question of we want to cut the size of the government or cut the federal funding or to deny the Ukraine or Israel or anyone else or Hamas humanitarian aid. It's not about funding. This isn't about some political ideology on the Second Amendment. This is about violence and threats, coercion, corruption, possibly even insurrection. And that's why I want to define those terms. And if those things aren't in existence, then this is slanderous and perhaps even libelous by Representative Marc Molinaro, because it doesn't make sense. And this is something that I think we must have an answer to. It must be made clear, which is why it's bothering me. And I do appreciate that Representative Marc Molinaro is responding to me in reference to this issue and has done so quickly. Hopefully this is not his staffer, but him himself, which is what I did request. And again, I will show you what he is saying here, but I think the issue is far, far greater. Representative Marc Molinaro, as I have shown you, said this is about violence. Either he is being slanderous and libelous in what he has said to Fox News, or there is an issue at the core of our government, whether amongst Republicans or Democrats, whether the establishment or the fringe, I don't know. Somewhere in our government, some elected officials, according to Marc Molinaro, are trying to coerce others into taking an action they would not otherwise take. That is a problem. I have called out progressive leaders of tomorrow, Antifa, the far left, for doing the exact same thing, to use the threat of violence and violence to try and cause people to take an action they would not otherwise take. And we do not support that, whether it's on the left or the right. It is something that enrages us, and especially for our elected officials, this is something that must be rooted out instantly. We need to know the names. We need to know who did this. Did this come from Democrats? Did this come from Republicans? Were they part of the Freedom Caucus, the Black Caucus, the Progressive Caucus? Who said this? Who made a threat of violence against members of Congress to vote in a certain way? Who did they tell that this threat of violence is? Who did they direct that towards? Was it directed towards Marc Molinaro? Did someone try to coerce him through threats of violence to make him vote in a certain manner? Have they done that in the past? Will they do that in the future? The public needs to know this so that person can be ejected from Congress immediately, instantly, and hopefully have charges pressed against them, because this is beyond unacceptable. It is a crime. It is a high crime, I believe, and that would be insurrectionist. It is the use of force to try and change the government. That is insurrectionist. Let's forget about what we've seen people try to paint the J6 prisoners. Let's forget about what we have seen from Jamal Bowman in pulling the fire alarm, trying to change the course of government while it's in operation. No, this is truly, and I think unequivocally something everyone can agree with, that if there are members of elected government, of Congress, who are trying to cause other members of Congress to vote in a manner that they would not otherwise do so because of violence, that is a crime, a high crime, an impeachable crime, a crime that must be made known to the public. And if that is not the case, well then, let's get this very clear. If that's not the case, that's slander and libel that Marc Molinaro has done. Again, we will give Marc Molinaro every opportunity to have his voice heard. In fact, I will refresh this as I am recording this in case he has responded while he has not. So I want to be very clear and give full disclosure here. But I am upset with Marc Molinaro because I feel his answer is insufficient and he is dodging. He is failing to address the core questions here. Questions that have been raised by credible news media quoting him. Either he has seen in the last 4 days something changed. What was it that Jim Jordan was presenting to the rest of Congress as his focal point as Speaker of the House that suddenly is no longer unifying or insurmountable? Something that did not exist in the last 2 votes, that was not made known to Marc Molinaro and the other members of Congress. What changed? What is the issue? He hasn't addressed that. He's avoiding that. And I don't care if you're a Republican or a conservative, you need to address that, because this is about your vote. Constituents like myself, like others, who don't know what these unknown issues are saying, well, Jim Jordan seems to present a focused approach to America and the issues affecting America. Why wouldn't we want him as Speaker of House? Is there something else going on? We need to know about our government, because Marc Molinaro, like Jim Jordan, like Hakeem Jeffries, like Jamal Bowman, AOC, they are all servants, including our senators, whether that would be LaFonza Butler, whether it would be Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand. They are all servants. They serve the public. So if they are doing something to propagandize or manipulate or alter the proper flow of government, an efficient and effective flow of government, then the public needs to know. Not only because criminal action should be prosecuted, but also to give voters the opportunity to elect someone better, to put someone who will serve the public in that office. And I don't care about the partisanship and the partisan politics. I don't care about that. Yes, I'm a Republican. Yes, I'm a conservative. And if someone is using either slander or threats of violence, either way, I don't want them in elected office. They don't deserve the position. And in some cases, that may mean that they should be sued and or they should be in jail. We need clarification. Marc Molinaro can't make these statements that there are threats and threats of violence that are being used to try and manipulate votes in the House of Representatives, because if they are doing it for Speaker, what else are they doing it for? And I don't mean just Republicans, I mean Democrats as well. If it is a culture in our government, in our Congress, that the public is unaware of, that behind closed doors, people are being threatened, not just with, oh, we're not going to endorse you, not just with, as we've seen with Democrats, oh, outside sources like MoveOn are not going to support any Democratic senator that dares to mention the name of anyone besides Joe Biden in 2024. Well, okay, that's political. I get it. That's funding re-elections. I don't agree with that. But that's one thing, and we can debate whether that's a good or bad thing. But to say that people are going to the point of threatening someone with violence? No. Now we've crossed a line that is universally denounced. That's universally something people need to be aware of. That is a crime. You don't have to fund XYZ senator because they didn't say Joe Biden is great. You're not obligated to fund anyone. But to force a vote? I mean, it was bad enough to see what they did to Dianne Feinstein and to use her as a puppet to tell her what to say and how to vote and when to do so in her last moments of life on this planet. It was insulting and vile and evil, and it came close to being illegal, but not quite there. But this takes it to a whole nother level. Were they puppeting Dianne Feinstein around with a threat of violence against her and her family if she did not obey what she was being told to do? Was it not just that Dianne Feinstein didn't have the mental faculties in the last moments of her life to be able to make decisions for herself? Was it that she was being threatened? And we have seen these statements come from many, many people in the last several years. We have seen this as recently as in Georgia, Marsha Maynor coming up and making the same statements that she was being forced, that she was told to be a puppet for the Democratic Party, that she was supposed to do what Dianne Feinstein did. Say whatever the party told her to say. To stand wherever the party line was, not with constituents, not with that elected official's best judgment, but to just be a puppet for the party. So this seems to be a problem at all levels of our government, in the House, and this seems to be a trickle-down effect. If we are seeing that members of Congress are being threatened with violence, left or right, I don't care, and it's coming from the establishment or the fringe, I don't know. But if this is something that is accepted practice, which is news to me, I have known many members of Congress. I have some of their phone numbers and talk with them directly and privately off the record. I have never been made aware of this, so this is new to me. This is a recent development. In 20 years of doing political commentary and talking to members of Congress on and off the record, I have never once heard someone allege that they were being threatened, let alone threatened with violence, if they did not follow the party line. This is new, and this is a development that cannot be allowed to exist as is. It must be denounced. It must be rooted out immediately. And therefore, I tell Marc Molinaro that you must identify who made the threat and who did they threaten and why did they threaten them. We must know the details for the American public to have any confidence in our Congress going forward, left or right. Because if one party's doing it, I damn well guarantee you the other party is doing it as well. They are not unique in their approach on how to deal with party line politics. They both use the same tactics all of the time. So if it is happening with Republicans, it is happening with Democrats, and that means the American people are being screwed. We need to root this out. This seems to be new, and that means we need to get whoever is doing it out immediately. This is critical to our government, and this will be suppressed. YouTube already is saying, you don't need to hear this independent voice. Guess what? CNN, MSNBC, ABC, the New York Times, you go through the mainstream news media, and not one of them have said who. Who is making this threat? Who are they making that threat to? Why are they making the threat? Why is none of the news media doing this, and why are they dumping this story on a Friday so that when I say this, it will be dead. This story will be dead as of Monday. They will move on to the next person who will be put up, nominated as Speaker of the House. They will turn the whole conversation into the new speaker and spin that issue, that person, along with the political ideologies of whichever side is talking about it, leaving alone the fact that there is intimidation and coercion and corruption at the core of our government. And if it is not real, if there is no person, and Marc Molinaro has only made this statement so to give himself cover for flip-flopping on his position with Jim Jordan, well, guess what? Then Marc Molinaro needs to be held accountable, because that would be slander and libel. And he would need to be held accountable for that. So it is either an issue with Marc Molinaro or it is an issue with our Congress. And this is a threshold moment for our government, and it must be addressed. We must have clarity. And God help me, I hope that more than just my base of subscribers hear this and take this seriously. I hope that people will spread this around and ask the same questions that I am asking. I am asking for all of the mainstream news media to do their job, to ask the question that I am asking. We have a credible source that has quoted him. We have the fact that he has changed his position. We do not have clarity on why he has changed the position, even as we are asking him this live, and he is failing to respond. Something else is happening in our government. And if we ignore this, if we allow this to happen, it will only get worse. Keeping your head down and saying politics don't affect me is the best way for corruption to seep into our government, and it does affect you. And it will affect you exponentially more if we do not address this. So let me finish this by saying this very clearly. Representative Marc Molinaro, use my email, contact me. Directly message me on Twitter in a private, off-the-record comment. Give me the information that I can then source out independently. Let me do my job. Or more importantly, stand up and clarify your statement. Make it clear who did what to whom. Or rescind it right now. Those are the only choices. Tell us who's doing whatever is happening, or you take back the statement and tell us that you didn't, that this isn't real. One or the other. There is no other option on this because our nation is at risk. And I take that very, very seriously. You get no leeway by saying that you are a Republican or a conservative, not with me, not on this issue. I hope people will spread this around. Again, I'm not calling anyone an insurrectionist. I'm not saying that they have made or not made slanderous or libelous statements. I need clarity. Voters need clarity. Americans need clarity. There's far too much at risk to have this haze continue to exist, and for the mainstream news media to just brush it off and move on to the next thing when this is at the core of our government. What do you think? How do you feel about this? Do you think this is important enough to share this with other people, to ask this same question? Do you think this is important enough that the mainstream media needs to address this besides this one man on this political commentary channel for the last 20 years? Don't you deserve to know? You tell me. I'll see you soon. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, admitted he has not read the Arizona immigration law. I know it is a difficult task to stand up in front of our peers and say to Congress and say that Congress has failed to listen to voters.
You here at CPAC said yes to President Donald Trump in 2016, and I know you're going to say yes to.
She was very aware that she had the flag in her hands and that the flag was dragging on the ground. That is an intentional action. She knows what she is doing. She then drops the flag. Understand the logic, and we see this in social media on a regular basis, and it's something that Newsweek decided not to tell you about. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, a representative in Congress who is writing laws to deny American citizens their rights, has no idea what she's talking about. And they are against the vaccine mandate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you support that?
Last time I checked, there were not a lot of planes crashing into each other at airports, right? You can meet a very, very stringent accuracy rate when it's important, when it matters, like in federal elections.
The quote from Joe Biden where he is admitting that he is willing to lie to the American people.